Hello.
Hi. Nice to meet
Very
you,
nice to
Marianne.
meet you too. Oh, there's quite a thick little bunch of... Please introduce yourself to each other, your name, your age and anything else you'd like to mention.
My name is Hugh Houston and I've been working for Newpin for 22 years. A restoration program for dads that have had their children removed into foster care because of things going wrong at home. They come to Newpin to make the changes they need to make to get their children back.
My name's Marianne. I'm a public health doctor and I work in a medically supervised injecting centre. I did medicine, I think like a lot of people, because I was sort of, young and idealistic and thought I'd save the world. And I did my electives in places like Africa and Arnhem Land. And I think I had this sense that probably I'd have to go somewhere different to do that. But then funnily enough, when I started working in King's Cross, I very quickly worked out this is where I want to be. Everybody took pride in making the place and the interaction and the environment so welcoming that we thought we'd had a victory when somebody stayed rather than if they left.
I think one of the most important things for me is when a dad comes to the door, that I listen to his story, I believe his story, and I see him as an equal person without judgment or prejudice. To me, that's so exciting that I see this man has probably never been heard before, never been valued as a person, as an equal person.
Yeah, that rings true. The single biggest thing that our clients say to us is thank you for treating me like a human being. It's not just about being nice to people. It's actually about genuinely meeting someone where they're at and accepting them for who they are, and whatever else is behind that, it's irrelevant. Were you always able to do that?
Look.
I think I'm ashamed to say I don't think I always have. I've wanted to, and I've liked the idea, but I don't think it's always come instinctively for me. And I remember a time when a friend and I used to try and do the crossword on the train, and we'd get on at Sydenham and get off at King's Cross, and it was a good day if we'd managed to get the quick and the cryptic done. And this particular day we'd done the quick but we hadn't finished the cryptic. And I walked in and I noticed that there was a client there who was sitting concentrating on the paper and then went, that's what it is, and wrote down the last clue in the cryptic. And I remember my instinct was to be shocked. And then I thought, well, why should I be shocked? What gives me the right to presume that, me and my friend are smarter than anyone that uses this service, because if you're a drug user, somehow that makes you not smart. And I guess what I've taken from that is we can't really judge people on their instinctive response. And actually, I think how we should be judging people is on their considered response. Because certainly when it comes to drug users and perhaps the dads that you see, the instinctive response is not one of, this is inherently a good person, unfortunately.
A dad that always comes to mind, he'd lost his child because of things that went awfully wrong at home. The mum was in a bad way and her behaviour wasn't good at all. What made it even worse, the children were separated, 4-year-old and a 2-year-old roughly. They needed each other and yet they were separated. So the dad came to Newpin and he was, I have to say, a gentle giant. He had a lovely, calm, nurturing face. He was insightful and he learnt so much about parenting. Anyway, the big day came and they were going to go home together. So the children arrived, Dad was standing at the door, blocking the sunlight, and they arrived. And he was able to tell them at that point that they were going home together. And Dad said, let's go home. And the little boy went for the little girl's hand. Took her hand, because he was so protective of his little sister. And they walked through the door. Down the ramp as a family. And that's why we do it. It's just indescribable.
I wish the clients that we see had that opportunity. They're telling me those stories 10 or 15 or 20 years later. And you do anything to be able to go back and change some of what has happened, because you talk about how painful it is, and opiate drugs treat pain, and opiates have always been the most common drug that we see injected at our centre, because by and large people are self-medicating their pain. And it breaks my heart that I see the other end of the the line. There was a moment when society cared about them because they were an innocent child, and there'd be an outpouring of grief if we discovered a case where they'd died or there'd been terrible neglect, and we'd all, as a society, want to do something to help them. And then they grow up, and then suddenly we don't care anymore. We've lost the empathy that we had for them as a child.
And that's what we often say to the dads too. If you could be sitting here and your child was a young adult, how do you think he'd see you? And that helps them to think, oh yes, I could do a better job here, I better try harder.
It makes me almost want to come and work. Like people say, you know, you clearly love what you do, Marianne, and you're clearly very passionate about it. You know, do you ever think you'll leave? The only thing that I would want to do, apart from what I do, is start in those beginning few years, because that's actually how you stop people. Like if I could do myself out of a job, I really want to come out and visit.
I'd love you to.
Yeah,
I'd love you to.